If I'm going to go into a conversation, I want to make sure that I'm present to have a transformational conversation. What is my end outcome? What are my desired outcomes of the convo? How do I want them to feel? And also, can I make sure that I'm aligned with them, curious, empathetic, so I can be as present as possible?
And maybe you're sitting there even listening, asking yourself, well, I've tried to put new things in place or build new habits. It's the start of the year. Maybe you've had some New Year's resolutions this year and you're asking yourself, well, how do I move past the point of no return and actually make a transformative change in my life? So that's the topic of today. So Mike, I would love to kick it to you to kick us off. And when you think about this question of how to have transformative conversations, where do you like to begin?
I like to begin with the end in mind. So it's like, what is the desired outcome that I'd like to help this person either get to or feel at the end of the conversation? So I do this quite often where anytime I look at my calendar for the day, I will take a moment and just look at each name of the person that I have on my calendar and just think about, what does this person need in, from my lens, but also like try to empathize with their lens. Like, what are they going through? Well, what do I feel like? Where do I feel like they are at right now in life? What do I think they need? What do I think I want them to feel? And I'll just try to think with the end in mind before I show up to the conversation. And then once I get to the conversation, I'm always going to show up with curiosity and empathy. Curious, where are you at? Empathize with whatever it is they're feeling. So, that's my initial first reaction of like, if I'm going to go into a conversation, I want to make sure that I'm present to have a transformational conversation. What is my end outcome? What are my desired outcomes of the convo? How do I want them to feel? And also, can I make sure that I'm aligned with them, curious, empathetic, so I can be as present as possible?
Awesome. Yeah. And I was going to ask a follow-up where it's like you're setting intentions, but how do you also balance that with what we don't know, right? To use the Johari's window analogy, if you don't know what Johari's window is, you can look this up, but everyone has a blind spot, everyone has a mask. How do you make sure that you actually get them to give you more information instead of just making assumptions? Because one of the things I recognize is I like to set intentions, but if I set too many intentions, maybe I'll try to force my perspective onto the situation, and maybe my perspective is actually wrong because I don't have a complete picture. What are your thoughts there?
100% valid. And that's why it's the balance between the empathy and curiosity. It's like, I have ideas of what I think based on the evidence that's in front of me, but I'm also willing to pivot as needed as the conversation unfolds. So there's that flexibility that needs to be there. So yes, there is some level of intentionality that goes in before the convo, and all of that goes out the window. It's almost like a sport. We have plays that we're calling, but sometimes you get to the line and you got to call an audible, right? Like the play can only go so far. It's a good strategy until it's not.
Sure. One of my mentors used to say, plan tight and hang loose. And so the whole idea there is, yes, have a plan coming in for a transformative conversation to take place. I do want to get into some nuts and bolts of how to actually have that conversation. But as a starting point, it's like set intentions and then also be willing to throw, any part of your plan out the window, depending on how that person shows up. And how do you know, right? I'll talk a little bit about how we know when to pivot. I was talking with someone last night, a friend of ours, and he has an MBA, and he says, probably the only thing I remember from business school was the answer to every business question. And the answer to every business question is, it depends. And I think this whole balance between set intentions and have curiosity is a great example of that. It's like, how do you know when to kind of push your agenda, and how do you know when to allow their new information to actually color the conversation and take it in a different direction? And the answer really is, it depends, but how do you know when? And that's why, showing up with presence, right, is so important.